This is episode 52 of the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Cade, and today I'm speaking with Krystal Kelly. Krystal is a true equestrian adventuress. Originally from California, Krystal left the USA in 2010 to begin her career working abroad with horses. Since then, she's traveled to more than 60 countries and has worked in over 20 countries on 6 continents with horses. She's worked with horses in places such as India, Egypt, Romania, Belgium, Italy, Indonesia, and many others. She is the founder of Equestrian Adventuresses, the tribe for women who love horses, travel, and adventure, and is a professional podcaster, YouTuber, public speaker, author, and coach. Now, let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Cade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi everyone, welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight. Today I am so excited to speak with Krystal Kelly. Hi Krystal, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Of course, and today's show is going to be really exciting because Krystal travels all across the globe working with horses, and I can't wait to dive into this and learn more about the books about what she does, but also exactly where she goes and what she does. So let's get into the first question I always like to ask, which is, the obvious one. How did your love affair with horses begin, Krystal?
I've always loved horses, and it's funny because my parents don't really know where I got it from. Like, they didn't have horses. I didn't have horses growing up, but my mother, she actually took me on one of those, little pony rides. Like, they're just in a circle, and I was probably 2 or something. And I was like the only 2-year-old child with like this biggest smile on my face. So after that, it was horses and only horses. They had to buy me every single horsey book and every horsey movie. And yeah, I was gone. So yeah, that's definitely where it started.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of us that have come on the show and talked about their love of horses. It's just sort of, we're born with it, and our parents often don't know where it comes from.
Exactly. Yeah. And most people, they assume like, oh, you've always had horses. Like, no, but I'm like, it's just part of my blood. I can't explain it. So yeah.
I totally hear you and totally agree. I feel the very same way. But this love of horses has led you to some amazing adventures. So you've traveled to more than 60 countries in your adventures. But first, before we get into the horse component of your traveling, tell us why you decided to become a world traveler. Like, how did you get started? Talk us through it, because that's a big leap in life.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad was in the military. So as a kid, I did, move a lot. So I think for me, it wasn't unnatural to be a little bit nomadic. And it just, I don't know. I always wanted to be a show jumper, and kind of the obvious place to go as a show jumper is go to Europe, go to Germany or Netherlands or Belgium or something. So I definitely from a young age always had this dream of traveling internationally and really pursuing my passion in the sport and a more higher level competitions and such. But I've always just been super curious about everything. Like, I'm the kind of personality that I ask the question, why? Why is it like that? Why is the sky blue? I need the answers. Why do they talk different languages? Why is the food different? I need the answers to all of these questions. So I've always been very curious, and I didn't feel like I fit in the small town that I grew up in California. So, it was just kind of like awkward for me there. And I just was like, okay, well, I don't fit in here. So let's go and find out where I fit in.
That is amazing. And how old were you when you first started your adventures? I'm curious, what age?
I actually left the US at the age of 21. I was actually 21 on the flight to my first international job. It was actually in Belgium. So I'm 21, and like in America, it's like such a big deal. Like, yeah, you can drink now. And I arrive in Belgium and they're like, yeah, we've been drinking since we're 15. Like, who cares? So, you know, it just was such a culture shock. I mean, I was there to work at a horse stable, so there wasn't much free time anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I basically spent my entire adult life abroad, you know, traveling around to different places. And it's, you know, when I go back to America now, it's funny. I think I went to a bar the first time in America like 2 years ago. And it just kind of occurred to me like, oh, this is the first time I'm like legal to drink in my own country. So,
And there has to have been so much cultural expansion for you and different rituals to learn and as you went through your adventures. And what's really exciting about this interview is you've worked with horses in 20 countries on 6 different continents. Can you tell us about, I mean, you said you flew over for your first job in Belgium where you were working at a horse stable. How did you marry your adventures overseas with being with horses? Like that, it's obviously that's what you wanted to do, but how did you make those things happen?
so, you know, when I first started traveling, and of course, you know, I did it with horses. For me, it was kind of the only option, but I didn't actually know that it was possible to work internationally with horses. I just sort of had it in my brain, like, that's the only thing I know how to do is horses. So I'm going to figure out how to make it work. And I remember, I think I was 18, and, you know, I told you my family was military. So the obvious solution if you want to go abroad is to join the military. So I went to like the Air Force and I talked to the guys and I was like, yeah, do you guys have horses? And they're like, well, no. I was like, all right, nice to see you. You know, so for me, it's like, I didn't really know how I was going to go international, but I knew it had to be horses, and I wasn't really leaving any room not to travel with horses. So I did find work. It was just basically on the internet that I got jobs. And the more I started traveling, it became more word of mouth. So I met someone who knew something. Some jobs I got totally by accident. So I actually got a job in Romania by accident. I sort of showed up in the country because I had met a Romanian girl in my first job in Belgium. And I was supposed to be there for like on holiday, like on a vacation, just to visit her. And I arrived, and my second day that I was there, she kind of pulled me aside and she was like, you know, Krystal, I'm really sorry, but I kind of have a job interview and I know we're supposed to like hang out, but would you mind if you came with me to the stables? And I'm like, no, of course not. So I went, and the guy who owned the stables, you know, he found out very quickly that I was a rider and that I worked professionally with horses. So he threw me on the horse. And, you know, like when you work with horses, they kind of throw you on that squirrely horse to see how good you are. So he threw me on that one. And we went out on this like trail ride, and I had a blast. And so we made it back to the stables, obviously. Nothing happened. And we arrived at the stables, and he's like, yeah, you're hired. And I was like, what? I didn't even know I applied for a job. He's like, yeah, you're hired. You're not leaving. I was like, oh, all right. Okay. I don't have anything better to do. So I happen to be looking for work. So why not? So yeah, it became kind of word of mouth. And I don't know, every job I found, it sort of led one thing to another. It's kind of a funny, yeah, the universe works in crazy ways.
I was going to say, it's like magical even to follow the threads of opportunities and just really trust in that that's the next step you're supposed to make. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think most people, the first flight ticket or the first leap is always the most difficult because you're jumping into the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you've made that commitment and you're kind of there and it's out there in the universe, I don't know, somehow it always reciprocates. You're always given and shown the next step. So,
I love that. And you have to be open to noticing that next step when it does show up, because sometimes you can be wearing those blinders and not see that. And it sounds like you've been very open to noticing the right next steps that the universe is providing for you. I love those kind of stories. It's so magical.
Yeah, I saw it as an opportunity. Like, when else do you get to ride horses in Romania? Like, why not? You only live once.
I know, that's amazing. And then when you do go to these other countries, how do you prepare yourself for managing the cultural differences? Do you read manuals, or do you just learn as you go and kind of watch other people and see what they do? How do you prepare yourself for the shifts in culture?
So I'm very obviously like blonde, white, green eyes. I do stand out. I did work in countries like Egypt and India. And the first time I went to work in Egypt, I will say I was very nervous. At the time, it was 2011. My brother was actually in Afghanistan, and his best friend growing up, like my neighbor basically, was in Iraq. So, obviously Egypt is not like a war zone, but actually the year that I went was the year that the Egyptian Revolution happened.
My.
So I definitely was very nervous. I didn't speak Arabic. I was nervous that I'm like a solo 20-year-old blondie, and now they're having some turmoil in their country. And I was definitely nervous, but there was something inside me that told me, you know, I'm not going to, I think, learn the information I want to learn by sitting here, like in a small town, and I'm not able to actually meet anyone that's ever been there where I'm from. So I decided, you know what, I'm working with horses. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to have guns or something. Like, it's a horse stables. And so I decided to follow my gut, and I did go, and I ended up staying for a year, but I went back to Egypt again later. So I stayed in Egypt for 2 years in total. And I loved it. Like, I learned how to speak Arabic. I rode a lot of amazing horses. I got to see the pyramids. You know what I mean? Like, I just had so much fun, and I did learn so much culturally. Now, I'm not going to say it was 100% easy. There are some cultural things that I had to learn, especially because I was a woman and I was in charge of men, and these men were uneducated. They didn't speak English, so I had to learn Arabic to kind of communicate with them. I had to learn how to, you know, kind of deal with that cultural barrier of being in charge. But once I sort of mastered that, then it became very easy, and I was able to sort of apply it in the other countries that I went and kind of pick up things here or there as I, you know, went. But yeah, I think it opens your mind, it opens your eyes, and I think the only way to learn is to go and to do it and to try it.
Just dive right in.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And then, you know, there's obviously some insulation in the horse world too, because the people who love horses, I think
Exactly.
most have a very gentle nature about them. And there's a partnership and a shared communication around the animals, which is pretty special.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, you always have that bond. So even if you don't speak the language, just like their love for the animal, I mean, it's obvious, like, we're all horsey people at the end of the day. Like, we're all the same. I went to Iraq, and I was invited by these men. They wanted to just show me their horses, and they are so proud of their horses. Like, they took me to like 5 different stables. They were like bringing out each and every horse and like telling me its life story. And like, I bred this horse. And then we all sat and had tea, and they were just like so excited. And they didn't even really speak that much English, but they just loved horses so much. And they are just like the friendliest people in the world. So yeah, you see this a lot with the horsey community, I think, in general.
I agree. And what is so neat about all the travels and adventures you've had, is that you have a business that you've kind of generated out of this. Can you talk to listeners about Equestrian Adventuresses and what that is and what they can find on the site and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so when I started traveling, I was doing it all solo. I was all alone. And I don't know, I think, wanted that community of other women, because I know, I mean, in America, it's mostly women that are riding. You know, in India, it's mostly men, but in America or England or wherever, like, it is a lot of women, obviously. So I was kind of missing that community. So I sort of started Equestrian Adventuresses not that long ago. It's been about a year. And so we have a YouTube show, we have a podcast, we have so many articles on the website. And it's just basically sharing a lot of stories, a lot of interviews, and just kind of a lot of women's personal adventures that they've done, either with their own horses in their own country. It doesn't have to be, you know, extreme crazy travels or whatever. But like, they're just adventuring, and they're like super cool, amazing women. And they just have so many awesome stories, which is how sort of the book idea came into manifestation. But yeah, so Equestrian Adventuresses is basically the tribe for women where they can come and connect with each other and share their adventures and story ideas and get resources and tips and information
about traveling around the world with horses or
basically,
taking with horses. That is so exciting. And you have a private Facebook group too, where people can really dive into the conversation even more. That is so great. And I also really love this. I wanted to ask you about it. You offer Equestrian Adventuresses apparel, which is such a neat component to the brand that you're building, but you designed it in a specific way. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of apparel you offer on the website?
Our logo, I think I'm quite proud of it, actually. It's basically, I mean, it's a woman galloping around the world. And I think I've always been really passionate about travel, but for some reason you never really see the two mixed together, like horses and travel or adventure. You know, I think a lot of people non-horsey people, when they think of, I don't know, horse people or equestrians, they think of like the arena stuff, which is great. I'm a show jumper. But, you know, it's more than that. Like, we love the freedom that horses bring us. We love to have adventures, and we are adventurous by nature. And, you know, adventure means something different to everyone. But like, you know, equestrian, like, we are just very adventurous people. And so, yeah, the apparel line, you know, we have all kinds of different shirts and sweaters and tote bags and like everything, you know, that you could think of. And it has, of course, the beautiful woman who I find very empowering, just galloping around the world. So yeah.
I love this. And what I love is that you're building a community of powerful, strong women and supporting those powerful, strong women in their adventures with horses, wherever they may go. And I think that is so special when women support other women in doing these sort of amazing things. So thank you for creating that.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually feel like these women in the group, like, I've gotten to know them. I get random emails or Instagram messages, and like the stuff that they tell me, like, I feel like I'm wimpy, some of the stuff that these ladies do. And I'm like, wow, I need to have a coffee with you. And this happens like every other day. And it's like, there's so many amazing ladies. And I feel like they're ambassadors, you know, by them traveling to these countries. Like, they are showing men that, you know, you don't have to be super rough with horses, or, you know, like, they're bringing their, you know, femininity, but in such a powerful and positive way. And it inspires other women to do the same, especially in those countries where it is male dominated. So, you know, when you're riding a horse, like, you might be having a good time, but you're actually putting an impression on those young girls that are waving at you, like, really excited, because they've never even known that that was a possibility, and now they do. Oh. So I love that the most.
That's amazing and so incredible. And I'm sure there's so much information sharing too. Like, say somebody is interested in, I don't know, going to Ireland and working with horses, or having an adventure on a horse, they could come into your private Facebook group and have a conversation with someone that could share with them their insight about what they may need to know when they go there. Isn't that right?
Oh yeah, there's women from pretty much every country you could think of in the Facebook group alone. And on our website as well, you know, we have a lot of free articles and stuff that people can read. And even in our books, like, you know, there's almost no country untouched by these ladies. Like, you can find stories, and just, I mean, on our website, we have, you know, women in Papua New Guinea that were riding horses. We have a girl in Yemen. She sat on a horse like once, and it changed her life forever. And she shares her story on the website. Oh. And it's heartbreaking, like, some of the things that she says, but it's like, I feel like the stories need to be told. And, you know, like you said, the information needs to be shared. And I feel like social media and all of these new platforms, like, that's how we do it nowadays. So it is breaking down a lot of barriers.
That's amazing. And helping other women, other powerful women that are doing something similar to what you're doing, or not even just traveling, they're not alone, right? There is a community and people supporting them in what they're doing, which is fabulous. So this is a perfect, you've mentioned the books a couple times. This is a perfect segue into talking about your book series. You have two, because this is the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. So, but you've written the Equestrian Adventuresses series and travel guidebooks for Equestrians series. So tell us about your horse books, and maybe hold up a couple so we can see your cover.
Yes. So first I'll talk about the series. And so we have just 3 books so far in the series. And actually the intention is every month to release a new book. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so basically in the group, I kind of post submission calls for people that they want to submit their stories. And so one of my stories is actually in this book 1, where I actually rode 2 of my horses across Ireland. So that story is in here. But basically the book series is true stories about women overcoming obstacles or challenges on the trail. And it's women, it is a very international group. So, you know, we have women from Poland or the UK or wherever, and they're traveling to India, or they're riding across South America with their toddlers. I mean, who does that? You know, so it, like, every single chapter in the book is completely unique. It's, you know, a totally different story. And I honestly, I couldn't say like what is my favorite of the 3 books, because they're all just like fascinating. But yeah, so they're all true stories, and yeah, they're all travel-y.
Wow, that's wonderful. So there's 3 books in the series. Your goal is to try and release 1 a month, which is fantastic. But these are all true stories of women taking on the world from the back of a horse, pretty much. So that
pretty much, yeah.
So
It's
great.
funny. We had one girl, I think it's in book 3. So she messaged me and she's like a 19-year-old girl, and just her personality like absolutely shines in the book. And I'll hold it up for you guys so you can see which one it is. And her story is just so fascinating because she went on this like amazing adventure. She lives in New Zealand. So she basically went like, I don't know, bushwhacking or something in the wilderness. And I mean that her story has quicksand, it has like hailstorms, mountains. They were there for Christmas. They had to like hunt with rifles to catch some food. Like they were crazy, these two women, like what they did. And I don't know, it's funny for me because it's sort of the first time I'm able to have an adventure without actually getting hailed on myself. so so I can actually experience it, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad actually that I'm reading about her doing that because I don't know if I would do that." So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And then when you call for submissions, do you do that through your private Facebook group, or do you do that on your website? And then you compile all the stories together and then release each edition as people bring forth their stories. Is that right?
Yeah, so far I have each book has been having a new theme. So book
Hmm.
1 was more about friendships and like sisterhood, and then the second and third book were both about like overcoming obstacles or overcoming fears.
Hmm.
And so I posted it on my Facebook group. I didn't really have to post it anywhere else as of now because I got so many like amazing stories. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't really turn down very many. There was like maybe a couple, but for the most part, everyone has a story to share. And we had one woman, she is from Poland, and she had to have someone like help her translate, and I step in a lot and I help them with the building the actual story and whatnot, piecing things together and
Mm-hmm.
making it like very exciting. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, a lot of these women, like they just have stories to share, and they're actually surprised like when they start typing it, like, oh man, I've been holding that one for a while. So it's very exciting for me when I get the submission, like the pitches, and I'm like, yeah, please send me that one. Like I need that.
Well, that's amazing. So you're also supporting people, informing people, but then also giving women a voice to share their stories of their travels. That is just so special. And then,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, and I love that. And I will certainly link to where people can find all of your books and your wonderful website in the show notes. I just wanted to make mention of that for people listening in. But then you also are giving another gift to women travelers who are interested in seeing the world on horseback. You've written travel guides for
Yeah.
Equestrian series. Can you talk to us a little bit
Yes.
about that?
And I have those as well.
Great.
So the travel guide, again, when I mentioned earlier, like when I started my travels, I didn't have resources like this. I went into Barnes and Noble once. That was before I got on the plane to Egypt. And I bought I didn't buy it. I opened a travel guidebook for Egypt. And, I was 20, I'm like a solo woman. So I particularly was interested in like, okay, what do I do as a solo woman traveler?
Mhm.
And I opened the guidebook and there was a special like warning for women traveling solo. And the stuff that it said, it scared the poop out of me. Like I slammed the book closed, I put it back on the shelf, and I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm about to get on the plane. So I was like terrified of guidebooks after that. I didn't even open one. And so the guidebooks sort of came from that, I think, we get a lot of questions, a lot of women asking for resources and stuff in the group itself. They want to hear, trip recommendations or where have you ridden, and they sort of want those resources. So the book sort of manifested out of that. So we do have the USA travel guide, and then we have the job book where
Mm.
it has some actual job listings, but it also talks about how they can get jobs internationally, sort of do what I did. And then it lists a whole bunch of job ideas that you can do if you just have no clue what you want to do. And then, of course, we have the Horse Riding in Every Country guide, which is kind of like a phone book, basically. It lists, like, I think in 180 different countries, horse riding stables. So you can actually flip to it and you're like, oh, I feel like riding in Ireland or Iraq or wherever, and we have that there for you. And then the last one is basically the world travel guide, and it just has just different countries where you can again get the information, like safety tips, where to go, what to do, and then of course where to ride, because that's what we really want to know.
Wow, that's amazing resources. And I love that too. And I think you mentioned something really, really important. Like as a woman traveling solo, safety, I think, is a big concern. And then fear of being safe in these places that are unfamiliar might stop a lot of women from actually taking on these travels. So what would you say to a woman who is, you know, like concerned about her safety going to another country? Like what would you tell that woman?
I think you'll hear, I think, a lot of fears from people, and most of it is maybe even their family members, like who've seen the movie Taken. So they've seen the movie Taken, and they're convinced that you're going to get kidnapped if you go to Europe or, you know, wherever. And it's funny, like I traveled to so many places, and I still, up until like a year ago, my mom is like, no, don't go there. I saw something on the news. And there's car crashes. I'm like, well, there's car crashes in America. You know, like that's not a reason not to go, Mom. So, you know, it is hard when you have those, especially if they're loved ones, feeding you their fears. So for me, you know, the best thing is, first of all, the world is not as scary as it needs to be. Of course, you know, we are women, and unfortunately, we do need to take some precautions. I definitely, you know, I travel to India differently than I travel to Europe. It's just one of those things. But I think if you're respectful of the culture and you are familiar a little bit with what is okay and what's not okay, like how to dress or something like that, then there's absolutely no reason not to go. And for the women that are just really feeling unprepared or not very confident about it, I do provide, I have a women's travel safety course. I do cover these kind of things in depth for people that want to actually travel abroad with horses. So I do have an online course, and also these travel guide books. So obviously if you order them like at a paperback form on Amazon, you know, they cost, I think, maybe $20 or something with shipping. But we do also provide these travel guides for equestrians for free if you go to our website, like as ebooks. So you can actually download the ebook, and then that way you can get some information. You know, I don't want that $20 is going to stop them from having these information and resources. So yeah, we do definitely provide that. And we have a lot of tips and stuff for women on our website. And I think there's a lot of resources out there. And if you just post in the Facebook group, like, hey, I'm going to this country, chances are you're going to find someone who's there. So.
Well, that's wonderful. And you have a course for women on safety when traveling in different countries. I think that is so valuable. And I'm glad you mentioned that you have that course and the resources on the website. So you've kind of covered all the bases here in talking about women being empowered to travel. I really love that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been I mean, obviously you can't do it if you don't love it. But for me, you know, when I set off into the world, I was naive. You know, I did go blindly into countries. So definitely I made some mistakes. I learned stuff on the way. I had to figure out the cultural things because I didn't know. I had to learn Arabic. I kind of did it like in the movie 13th Warrior. Like I just listened to them. And then suddenly one day I could kind of like blah, blah, blah. But you know what I mean? Like I didn't really have the internet or guidebooks at that time to help me. And so I don't know, for me, it's just kind of like, I need to give these ladies as much as I can because I feel like I was able to do this for a reason. So I need to share it.
Oh, that's what a gift. That's so generous to share that knowledge and pass it forward so other women can have similar experiences or not be afraid to go and give this a try. And is there a message in your books and in what you're doing that you really hope to leave with readers, or is there a message in your books that you hope readers will grasp?
I think one of the common things that you'll read from all three of the Equestrian Adventuresses series is that these women, they're doing like amazing things, but I want to say they're normal people. You know what I mean? Like they are like you, like me. They're normal. They just love horses, and they were, I don't know, something triggered them or whatever. Like they share their stories, but something that they did or a decision that they made or, you know, whatever it was, it's kind of like what you see in Hollywood movies. Like they sort of rose to the occasion and they became this like amazing adventuress, if I can say, like, you know, this hero. And not all of them see it, you know, they're sharing their story of, you know, their mishaps or this or that, their learning experiences or the bad things that have happened. It's not just beautiful Instagram photos, of people on beaches. Like, it's the real story. It's the stuff that you don't usually hear about. But they make it so human, and they make you feel like, what am I sitting here for? Like, there's no reason. Like, she's doing it. Like, I need to book the ticket.
That is awesome. So it's inspiring and
Yeah.
helps people understand that anybody can take this on. They just have to book that ticket. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so how, I mean, you've mentioned you have a podcast and you have a YouTube channel, you have a wonderful website, you've written your books. Is there any, and you have the very active Facebook private group, is there any particular method you use to reach your audience or readers for your books? Do you do any like special kind of outreach, or is it pretty much people coming to you because they're discovering you?
So far, the majority of it, I will say, is Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that was done organically. When I started the group before I opened the website. I think I made the group and I was like, oh, wow, there's like something here. I'm not the only one. So I made the website, and then I don't know, it sort of fell into me, and it was suddenly like I'm being swamped by stories and this, and I'm like, okay, I need to make a podcast because they're sharing their story, and oh, I need to do YouTube or whatever. And I love doing all of it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think definitely I got a lot of word of mouth from Facebook, especially women inviting other women into the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have to, seek people to come to the group. Usually they kind of hear about us and they want in. And obviously, I mean, we accept everyone that wants to come. But yeah, so I definitely a lot from Facebook. And I'm trying to shift a little bit more onto the YouTube platform because I personally love videos and film, obviously books as well. I don't know, I'm a creative person. I like stories, and I feel like when you read something or when you watch something, it's a little bit more powerful than just a Facebook post.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the two things that I'm really trying to develop even more. That's why I said I want to do like a book a month, and then I'm like just trying to pump out a lot of YouTube videos as well. So those are the two that I think I want to continue the most.
I really love that. That is, and again, it's like when you started off on your travels, like everything just sort of showed up and spoke to you, and the universe provided, and you stepped right into it, and you're like, okay, Facebook group is going to now become a website, is now going to become YouTube and a podcast and books, and I am going to be a resource and look at all the magic you're creating and all the people that you're helping. That is so awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's nice to hear, because I've definitely I feel like I've been sort of pushed into this route somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice for me when I do get like the stories from women, and I'm like, okay, great, I'm not the only one that wants to hear this, but they also want to hear the stories and share their stories, which I think is amazing.
And I think what's most special about this too is you love the work. You love what you're creating. You love what you're doing. You love who you're helping. You love the message you're sharing. That just makes it all the more better. It's not like it came to you and it's like, whoa, all this stuff happened, but it's like you're actually finding joy out of it at the same time. And I think that is the most magical thing that can happen in a life with work, and particularly when it's involving writing, being creative, and horses. It doesn't really get any better than that. And empowering women is like perfect.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. No, it's very true.
So I'm curious. So did you decide to do the independently publishing route or the traditionally published route when you decided to release your books? Like which choice did you end up making?
So I went with publishing it myself. So I have published it via Amazon. And so I've studied a lot of marketing, and I'm like a member of a lot of masterminds and a lot of different, so I really pursue my education from a business perspective as well. And so for me, when I was kind of thinking like, do I want to pursue a traditional publisher? I know how much work goes into that, but also they don't necessarily do the marketing for you. I'm going to be running around doing this anyways. And, if I do it myself, I can put out a book a month. I mean, realistically, I do have a life sometimes, but realistically, I can do a book a month. And I enjoy genuinely reading the stories and kind of giving my input. I'm by no means like a professional editor or something. Like, for sure, I mess up sometimes or whatever, but the stories are there, So for me, it was kind of like, no, I have the community, and right now, it is word of mouth. I see that the people really crave this topic and that there is a love for it and a passion for it. So, for now, I'm just going to kind of do it myself and just kind of go hardcore marketing on my own. And then if in the future I feel like, being super famous, then I guess I can try that too.
Well, that's pretty awesome, because there now sort of what's happening is there's this independent traditional hybrid model happening. And often the way the traditional side of things shows up is having built your foundation and built your following
Exactly.
and built your group and put out a few books on your own. And then,
Exactly.
then they take notice. It's sort of like how it used to be in the music industry, where they'd send A&R execs out to find bands that already developed kind of a following that already had an audience to bring to the music. So that's exactly what you're doing for your brand and
pretty
your,
much.
your books.
Yeah. I mean, the social media is basically taken over. Like, people, they don't even go to the news. They go to Facebook for the news. Like, how insane is that? But that's what's happening. So, for me, I feel like social media is, it is an actual thing that needs to be leveraged. So if I have the people and I know how to get more people who like horses and travel, then yeah, why not just do it my way? And then, like you said, at some point, maybe they'll notice. If not, it doesn't really matter, because I know I'm going to find the people that need this book.
Exactly. You are 100% in tune with, and you know who your audience is. And then the beauty of the independent publishing too is you have freedom to release as you like, when you like, how you like, and you create your own covers. And often with traditional publishing, it takes a longer time to get a book out into the world. So if you want to do a book a month, independent publishing is the perfect way to go.
And for me, like, the books, I don't look at it like, oh, these books are going to make me a millionaire, like, okay, maybe I get a little bit of money, but honestly, with marketing and like ads or whatever, am I really getting that much? I don't know. Maybe at some point, but I don't know. To me, it's more about kind of the message and the stories. And, I feel like the money comes when you help people. Like, the more that you help people, the more that you in return will also receive as well. So, yeah.
I 100% agree. I mean, it's really for the magic of sharing your knowledge and being creative and bringing people together and empowering others ultimately.
Yes.
And I believe that does bring success. I think you've got completely the right mindset there.
That's why I think it's great, like, you supporting other authors. I don't like it. Unfortunately, like, I'm all about women empowerment, but unfortunately, you do find women that are catty and they try and like keep others down or whatever. It happens everywhere, but for some reason, some women are more vicious than others. So it's great when you do find other women that lift each other up, because that's the only way, like, we can go higher ourselves, is by other women. Men aren't going to do it. They're busy.
I totally agree with you. And I'm glad that we share that thing in common, that we like to spotlight and share the stories of other women doing amazing things. It's so important to take care of each other. And so this is a question I really wanted to ask you, because so much of your time is spent traveling and you have so many different plates spinning around what you're creating with your business. Do you have a special time of day to work on like the business end of things, or how do you create your schedule because even scheduling this podcast interview was kind of challenging, because you didn't know when the next time you might have internet is, and we had to do, and you're in Germany and I'm in Arizona in the US, so we had 7-hour time difference. So you got a lot going on, and then you're traveling around, you don't know when you're going to have internet. How do you create your schedule, or how do you get things done? Like, how do you work that out?
It's funny. I think I still get emails from one of the ladies. She sends articles for our website sometimes. And sometimes she'll mail me like, do you ever sleep, Krystal? I'm just like, yes, as I'm sending this at 2 a.m. or, So yes, I do definitely, when you're an entrepreneur, it's funny. I think it's a quote or whatever. It's like, entrepreneurs are the only people that will work 80 hours a week to avoid a 40-hour-a-week job. So I've definitely had days where I felt like that person, like, what am I doing? Like, there's only one of me. But I think now I'm starting to slow down a little bit more, because I've kind of set up some of the systems. So that way, I think the great thing about when you have a community, I was nervous actually when I went to make the first book for the series. I was kind of nervous, like, if I try and write this book all by myself, it's just going to be a book about my stories, which, is kind of boring. So I wanted it to be about other ladies. Like, I prefer not to talk about my stories. Like, I want to share their stories. So I was nervous, like, if I send out this like kind of submission call, is anyone even going to send me something? But I was overwhelmed when I got so many emails, and, you know, people did, and they sent me amazing stories. And, you know, I had one girl also, she sent me a story, and it was really, really good. She went to Italy, and she like bought a show jumping horse, and she was riding, and she didn't speak Italian, and she was struggling a lot. And after the book was published, she was like, yeah, I wasn't sure if I should share that story with you, but I'm glad I did. And I was like, oh, well, I'm glad you did too. So, you know, it's great for me, like the support that I get from the members as well. So I feel like on my rainy days, I get them helping and lifting me up as well. But yeah, as far as my schedule and everything, I do have to plan a little bit if I'm basically in the middle of nowhere with no internet for weeks or months or whatever. I have to kind of hustle a little bit to set everything in place or schedule posts or something, try and get as much done as I can. But then usually when I'm in the, I don't know, black hole zones or whatever, I'm doing a lot of like filming stuff and preparing everything, or doing video editing to put on our YouTube. So I'm almost never like doing nothing. I always have something that I can work on, even if I don't have internet. And then, you know, the people that I have in place can kind of help with the online stuff when I'm out of it. Yeah, that's kind of something that I'm still trying to perfect, I'd say.
But, you know, and again, I loved your analogy of, you know, only an entrepreneur will work 80 hours a week to avoid the 40-hour job. But,
Yeah.
but when you, and I get that. I mean, I can be like that all the time too. But what's interesting is it doesn't feel like work when it's your passion or your, you know, what you're creating. Like, it doesn't feel like work. So I think that that's why it's easier for us to work longer and more often on our businesses. And then you said another really important thing, which is systems. Systems take a lot on the front end to get into place, but once you do, then you get more freedom on the back end. So good on you for putting in the hours. And I know what a bear it can be sometimes to be the only one working on these things, but you're passionate and you're creative and you're making a difference for people. So it's all worth it in the end, you know? And
yeah, exactly. I mean, the travel guide series, for example, it took me like 3 months to put these books together, you know? I mean, that probably doesn't sound like a lot to put a book together, but like it was a lot of hustling and a lot of putting things together. And then I had to build the systems for it so that you guys could get it emailed to you without me having to individually do every single one, you know? So there is a lot of back work that I think a lot of people don't really see, but it wouldn't exist without that. So it's just kind of like, okay, I have to do it. I schedule a certain day that I get those tasks done, and then guess what? I get to read really cool stories or make really cool videos for the rest of the time, so I can deal with that.
That's great. And I had a question about compiling the stories into your anthology. Do you set up a legal contract with the people whose stories that you use inside? Like, how do you work with their copyright, or how, you know, how does that all work when you're pulling other people's stories together into a compilation? Is there any special way you have to approach it?
I do have a contract, which I request, you know, when I put out the submission and they send me like a story pitch, I do inform them, like, I do need that you sign this contract so that I have permission, because obviously if they tried to publish their story in a different book, then it's a copyright issue. So I do have a contract that says, you know, I have the rights to this story, so I can publish it in the book. I can also make an audio book out of it. So we do have audiobooks as well. So they have to sign that contract. So far, I personally, like, I'm naturally like a handshake kind of person. So for me, it feels awkward to have to put on this like serious face and be like, no, I need it in writing. So it's a simple contract. It's not like I hired a lawyer for it, but it is an actual professional contract that I found. And so I have them sign that. And then most of it, you know, I think for me, it's important to share the story. Like I said, I'm dealing with a lot of different countries. So I don't know what the rules are in Poland, you know, so I don't know how much the contract applies in Poland, but I have it. So for me, I think it's more about, you know what, it's about the message, and she's sharing the story. Like, she knows what she's getting into. She's sending it to me.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, okay, I think that paper for now is all I need.
Yeah, and I mean, they get credit inside the book for their
of course
story
they have their own author bio, and I always plug them if they have a website or blog or whatever it is. So for me, and I think for them as well, they do benefit. Like, I have the people, I know the people. So if they want to get their message out there, like, you put your story in my book and I promise they're going to see it, because I'm reading this lady's story and I'm like, who is this lady? I need to talk to her. So yeah, it's definitely very good publicity for them, I will say.
Absolutely. But what you've done with having them sign that you have the right to use that is very important as an entrepreneur. You're just protecting yourself. It's
Exactly.
like, I think horse people in general are pretty trustworthy. And if they want to share your stories, or their stories with you, because you're doing them a service by compiling them and putting them in a book, generally I think it feels like it would be safe. But as a businesswoman, you always have to protect yourself.
And
so
I did get a story and I had like a red flag. The woman was just like, no, we need to change this in the contract and that. And I'm like, okay, like, it's just, I'm sorry, I have bad vibes. It's just like a small, simple story. I feel more comfortable if you put it somewhere else. So I've definitely said no because of that, to try and protect myself. I'm a small business owner. Like, I have an online business. I have to, like you said, protect myself. For the most part, people are kind and nothing bad is going to happen, I'm sure. But yeah, it's better safe than sorry, definitely.
Yeah. And good on you for noticing that red flag, because if there's nitpicky stuff going on at the beginning, that's an indicator of how the partnership could continue down the line. So you always have to.
I don't want death emails like, you misspelled something. So
that's
don't
great.
need that.
I'm really glad you shared that. I just wanted to address that, so people listening in and aspiring authors who might want to do their own compilations of stories in another sort of area of equestrianism had that information on how to protect themselves. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I will say too, because I am dealing with a lot of international authors, so it is probably a little bit complicated, more so for me than for others, because I have people in like just crazy places. So I can't even actually physically mail them like an author copy, because they're in the jungle somewhere. So you know what I mean? So it is a little bit complicated, and I do definitely, I'm doing the best I can, but I'm not perfect either. So yeah, I think if you're strict and you kind of make that clear in the beginning, I think, it's
good. It's always better to give them way too much information at the beginning rather than add things in later down the line.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you figured that out as you started putting this together. What kind of questions are you going to get on the front end, so you could answer those in advance? So that makes a lot of sense.
Actually, I think for my next book, I'm going to make like a British to American like translation. When you submit your story, please do not do things like, they make their air quotes backwards, or I don't know, they do all kinds of weird things in England. And I have a lot of like British people sending me stories, and I'm reading it like, oh no, my Word document is American. And it's like going crazy. Everything is underlined in red that it needs to be spell checked. And I'm like, British people, please just spell the word favorite like an American.
Yeah. So you need to create your own like style guide. I can understand how that could get a little confusing and
so I did warn them. I'm like, this is going to be in American English, so you're gonna read it and think I spelled something wrong. But it's not, it's just Americanized. so far all of the British have been cool about that. No death emails yet. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it is great visibility for them, and it's a way to get their story out, because not everybody aspires to write a whole book, but they may want to tell their story. So you're giving them that platform to do so. That's really special.
Yeah.
So, we've kind of touched a little bit on what you found to be the difficult part, but I always like to ask these questions because there's always some, great information to be shared. But for you, what has been the hardest part about being an author, an entrepreneur, and a traveling horsewoman? And then on the flip side, what's the best part of that?
So I think most people don't realize how much work the marketing portion of it is. They think the writing of the book is the hard part. And I am a writer myself, so I did write a story. I'm not totally lazy, but I do understand the work that goes and the energy into creating a story, but also the marketing is like, it's a thing. And it's basically like for your whole life, as long as you want to make some money out of it, you can't stop doing that. So, you have to pay for ads, you have to pay for, the cover design, so you're putting a bunch of your money in, and you actually don't even know if anyone wants to read it. So, the marketing is definitely, I would say, the biggest thing, that you have to actually make a plan. You have to be willing to play with ads or put a little bit of money into it. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they first start their business, they're always trying to save money. They don't want to spend money on the systems or the things. I know I did that mistake a few years ago when I started shifting to having like a blog and such. I was trying to like read all the free stuff, and it just, in the end, it just cost me time and it didn't actually benefit me. So, once I started putting in the systems and actually like, what, I'm just going to pay for ads, or I'm going to do, it's a business. I'm going to treat it like a business, and I'm going to treat it like a traditional publishing company would. So I'm thinking more big picture than I am small picture. But definitely the marketing, I would say, is one of the big things that I have to put a lot of energy into, and planning behind and thought process. I want to talk about it in my group, but I also don't want to annoy them that we've made this book, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a fine line, and I'm experimenting sometimes, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't post about that today. So, it is a fine line. And then as far as the best part of it, I mean, first of all, I can make my own schedule. Like, I can go to Greenland and ride horses, and like, I got invited to go there. So, I got to go and ride horses, and I can't really complain about that, to be honest. So, and I got to go and meet other women who were in my group, and we all had this like amazing adventure together. So, and I videoed it, and it's on our YouTube. So I've gotten to, and I interviewed a lot of these women. So when you put them behind a camera, or when you have them send your story or something, they really do share something with you. Like you do. And it's not always that I publish all of that. You might not always see the really dark stuff on the YouTube or something, but they still opened up, they still shared, and you can see it on their face, or like, like, why am I not doing that? Or whatever it is. And you just really connect with people on a whole different level that I think I wasn't able to connect with before, because before, when I traveled, I was kind of like the independent, I'm doing this and I'm hardcore on my own, proving a point, so now I think I'm really embracing, like, actually, there's a lot of us, and, why not talk about this stuff as well? It doesn't have to be all happy unicorns and fairies all the time. So yeah, I think that's one of the best things that I enjoy the most.
Oh, so yeah, the community aspect where you can share the successes, share the pain points, share the tough stuff. These are your people. This is your herd. It's your, or like you said, your tribe. Like, and there is something really special in having that sort of understanding in another group, or another person, another woman who's taking it on. Because I hear you, and I'm doing it all by myself. I'm an individual. I don't need anybody.
Exactly.
But actually, you're stronger when you're working together with other people and building relationships and partnerships, because you don't have to go at it alone. And that's something I think powerful women sometimes have to take a minute to learn. Yeah, it takes a second to learn that you can trust other women, and that trusting other women and building a community only makes you more powerful, and them at the same time. So I just love that message that you're sharing. So what advice would you offer to someone interested in traveling on horseback in a new country for the very first time? So say we have a listener on this show that is just sitting there going, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by Krystal, but I'm afraid. I don't know if I can do this. Like, what would you say to that person?
Yes. So first of all, you got to download the travel guide books for equestrians. I've heard about these, and they're pretty good. So my advice would definitely be, you have resources, like unlimited resources. Like, there's books, there's YouTube videos, there's articles, there's women that you can actually speak to. Like I said, there's almost no country that you can think of that you couldn't find someone and say, hey, have you been there? Or what's it like? And for me personally, I would say the best thing that you can do, definitely come to Equestrian Adventuresses for the information, but also just book the ticket, like just do it. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The only bad thing is, if you do it, you will then be addicted and you'll want to do it again and again and again. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's great advice. I mean, sometimes it's just that first step. And when you make that commitment, that first step, it opens up this whole world for you, because you've just committed to doing something. So buying that ticket, I know I'm going, where have you? And oh my gosh, I have to go. I have to know. I've made a commitment to myself. And then this world kind of blooms around you, just sort of like the universe opens up and resources start coming, you start educating yourself, and then you go do it and you prove it to yourself that you can do it. And then, ta-da, then you
I
want
think
more.
one of the things, like most people when they go on a vacation, let's talk about non-horse people, they go in some resort or whatever, they come back, they feel refreshed, they feel relaxed, but it wasn't life-changing. And I can say I've never met a woman that went on like one of these horse expeditions. It doesn't matter if you're going with your own horse, like with a couple of pack saddles, or if you're going like booking an all-inclusive, I don't know, luxury horse safari. It really doesn't matter, because I've never met a woman that went on a equestrian related adventure and it didn't completely change their life. Like, it opens their eyes and they see things and they meet people from such a different perspective. You're with horses, you're in the nature, you're in remote villages or like just really unique countries, and you're connecting with people and eating the food. And it's such a life-changing experience. And I've had the fortune of watching women, because I've gone with women on these expeditions. I've organized a couple of trips.
Oh, cool.
And even my own mom, she did her first ever. She wasn't really a horse rider. She's like watched me over the years, but she's like, I'm old, I'm never going to do that. And I have this love for the country Bhutan. So I've been to Bhutan a few times. I actually started the riding club there. And they didn't have horses in their country, really. Like, they were pack horses. And so I made people ride in this country. And I actually brought my mom to Bhutan, and she rode horses there. I mean, I told her to take lessons and stuff and prepare, she wasn't totally unprepared, but she came and we rode horses. And, it's a Buddhist country, and she's meeting, I call him my Acho, my big brother, and like the local Bhutanese guide, and that I had kind of worked and trained with the horses. And, the way that she was seeing nature was something that, she never would have done it on her own 2 feet. The places, I mean, these were steep mountains. These are like hardcore little mountain ponies. Like, they know the land. I would feel nervous on my own 2 feet hiking up that, but they're like little mountain goats. And, they kind of carried her in all these places, and she had her first like canter in this lovely meadow. And, those kind of experiences, I think it really makes me feel good when I see the emotions and expressions coming out of other people's faces. Like, it is life-changing. It's not just, I don't know, some resort relaxing getaway. Like, you actually do change, but you can't change if you don't book the ticket, if you don't go.
Oh, that is such a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Book the ticket, everybody. Get out there. Get out there with
if my mom can do it.
It just sounds like she had a wonderful time, and you opened up a whole new world for her. I mean, that is, and horses opened up a whole new world.
Yes. Yeah.
That is amazing. So you are up to so much around what you're doing, and I am so glad you're doing it. Thank you for all the work you're doing to benefit other people. But what are you curious about right now? Like, sort of like, what's next? What are you thinking?
Well, my bucket list as far as countries I want to visit, like, never ends. It's always replaced by something else as soon as I cross it off. So that just is forever there. And I love when I do get random emails or, I don't know, Instagram messages or something, and they're like, hey, have you heard of this place? I live there. Come visit me. I'm like, okay. So I get messages like this. And actually, so where I'm planning on going next, so I'm in Germany at the moment. I kind of got trapped here with the whole coronavirus thing. So this wasn't really planned, but my horses are here with me. So where I'm planning on going next is actually to Greece. And because it's Greece, and why not? So I'm going to take my horses with me, and that is kind of my new plan. So I'll have to find somewhere for me as a human being to stay, because I've already sorted out my horses a place, as you do. So I'm going to have to figure out where I'm going to stay, but my horses are sorted. And yeah, I think for now, I want to just continue kind of spreading the message with Equestrian Adventuresses, doing more books, more YouTube videos. And at some point, maybe I can kind of pass the baton a little bit more and just kind of like, hey, if this other lady wants to take over the podcast, or this one wants to do, I don't know, the book series or whatever, like, I'm more power to you. So at some point I might start, like, I'm already kind of recruiting some people as I go, but I might kind of see where that goes as far as, recruiting more and more ladies that really love to just talk about travel and horses.
Oh, that is so fantastic. And I am just so moved by this conversation, and thank you for being on the show today. And I cannot wait to share your message with my listeners and spread the word about the wonderful work you're doing. Would you share where people can find out more about you and your books and your podcast channel and YouTube. And I'll make sure to link to all those places in the show notes.
Yeah. So the important thing to know is Equestrian Adventuresses. So if you stumble onto our website, you will find the links to our YouTube channel, or you can go to the Facebook and just type in Equestrian Adventuresses, come and join the group, and download the podcast on, iTunes or Spotify or whatever. And it's the same with the YouTube channel. It's Equestrian Adventuresses. I'm the crazy looking lady with some horses. So yeah, pretty much like whatever style they prefer, if they prefer books or audio or whatever, like we're there. So, Instagram, Twitter, all this kind of noise. Yeah, I would say definitely the books you can find on Equestrian Adventuresses or on my Amazon author page.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's amazon.com/author/Krystal Kelly is my name. Mm-hmm. So yeah, all of the books are there. And like I said, if you want a free copy of the World Travel Guide or the Travel Guide for Equestrians, just go to equestrianadventuresses.com and yeah, and that's it.
Oh, it's wonderful. I wish you safe travels and I love how you prepare your horses. The horses always come first. Same over here. The horses always have to have a place to go first before we take care of our own needs. That's really special. But yeah, I wish you super safe travels and thank you for all the great work you're doing and the inspiration you shared here today. And keep me posted. Let's get you back on the show again and we can talk maybe more in depth about some of your travel trips. So
definitely.
Best of luck. Thank you so much for being on the show, Krystal.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and riding, just like me. Visit my website, carlycadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlycadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlycadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Cade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.